Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are digging into one of the most explosive, most talked about stories of our time, the Epstein files. So what exactly are they? And, more importantly, why should you care? Let's get into it.
So picture this, it's January 30th, 2026. On that one single day, the Department of Justice drops 3.5 million pages of documents, all related to Jeffrey Epstein. And look, this isn't just some boring data dump. This is the kind of thing that could literally change everything.
So when people talk about the Epstein files, what are we actually talking about? Well, it's way more than just a list of names, that's for sure. Think of it as this massive, sprawling archive of evidence. We're talking emails, photos, private flight logs, you name it. It basically maps out the entire scale of Epstein's huge, powerful network.
All right, so here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with what these files are, then we'll get into the whole political fight to even get them released. After that, we'll peek inside to see what they actually tell us, look at the crazy global fallout, and then wrap up with the big question: what don't we know yet?
Okay, first things first, let's just try to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this thing. And honestly, it's kind of hard to overstate just how massive this release of information really was.
So the collection is just staggering. We're talking about over 300 gigabytes of data. To put that in perspective, that's more information than you'd find in a small library. It's got everything from his infamous contact books and flight logs to just mountains of FBI evidence from the criminal cases. It's basically the digital blueprint of his entire complex operation.
But, getting our hands on these files wasn't easy. Not at all. Their release was actually the result of this year-long, super high-stakes political showdown. It was basically the public demanding answers versus the government, well, pushing back.
And man, what a roller coaster it was. It all started back in 2024 with these big campaign promises for total transparency. But then, fast forward to mid-2025, and the DOJ suddenly seems to be changing its tune. They put out this memo saying, hey, there's no client list. Well, as you can imagine, that sparked a ton of public outrage. The pressure just kept building and building until finally, Congress had to step in and force the issue with the Epstein Files Transparency Act.
And that pressure? It became absolutely impossible to ignore. Just look at the vote in the House. It was almost unanimous. 427 to 1. This wasn't a Democrat or Republican thing. This was a clear, unified demand from pretty much everyone for the truth to come out.
So, after all that fighting, all that political drama, what was actually in those millions of pages? All right, let's dive in and see.
Okay, so if you crunch the numbers on the files, you start to see which names pop up most often. Right at the top, you have Epstein's inner circle, his key staff, his assistant, and his accountant. Then, a bit further down the list, with tens of thousands of mentions, you find names like Donald and Melania Trump, Epstein's lawyer, and of course, his accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, and this is super important to remember, these are just mentions. They don't, by themselves, imply any kind of wrongdoing.
But honestly, the really mind-blowing stuff is what's beyond just the names. This is where you get a real look into Epstein's world. I mean, the files have things like a draft indictment from 2007 that was never even used. There are FBI interview notes with his staff, secret communications from the UK government, and even internal emails talking about his death in prison. It's just incredible.
So you might think the story ends with the release of the files, right? Nope. In a lot of ways, that was just the beginning. It kicked off a whole new firestorm of controversy, and the fallout, well, it was truly global.
And the first and most shocking controversy was a total catastrophic failure in how the government handled redacting the documents. The goal was supposed to be simple: protect the victims. But the reality, it was a nightmare. A review found that the full names of at least 43 victims were just left in there, completely exposed. Some of them appeared over 100 times.
You can imagine the lawyers for the survivors were absolutely furious. One of them, Jennifer Freeman, put it very bluntly. She accused the government of, quote, hiding the names of perpetrators while exposing survivors. It was just seen as this profound betrayal of the very people this whole process was supposed to protect. And the consequences came fast, and they hit on an international scale. Over in the UK, the information in these files led directly to the arrest of Prince Andrew. Yeah, that Prince Andrew, on suspicion of misconduct in public office. I mean, a stunning, stunning development for the British royal family. And the dominoes just kept on falling all across Europe. In Slovakia, a top national security advisor was out. In the UK, another prominent politician stepped down as their connections came to light.
Then you've got Norway, where the scandal reached the absolute highest levels of power. The country's former prime minister, Thorbjorn Jagland, was actually charged with aggravated corruption, with the charges tied directly to this case.
And if that wasn't enough, the United Nations Human Rights Council weighed in, and they framed it in even starker terms. A UN panel looked at the evidence and called Epstein's entire operation a global criminal enterprise. They even suggested that the sheer scale of it all might actually amount to crimes against humanity. Just wow.
So even with all of these bombshell revelations, this story is far, far from over. So what happens now? What are the huge questions that are still hanging out there? Okay, first up, the mystery of the missing pages. Get this, the Department of Justice itself said it had identified over 6 million pages of relevant files, but we've only seen about 3.5 million of them. That's a huge gap. So the big question is, where's the rest of it?
And the fight for the full story is still raging. Right now in Washington, you've got members of Congress going into secure rooms to review the unredacted files, and they're threatening contempt charges if they don't get full compliance. And on the world stage, at least 3 different European countries have launched their very own trafficking investigations because of what these files have shown.
At the end of the day, this whole saga with the Epstein files leaves us with one final, really vital question. It's a powerful reminder that information is power. But it also forces all of us to ask, when that kind of power is on the line, who gets to decide what we see and what stays hidden in the shadows?